Well, shalom to everybody. I hope you guys have had an amazing couple of days, and uh, it's certainly it's certainly a journey. Every time that you think that you have a piece of it figured out, a piece jumps out at you, and the world changes again. So what an amazing time this is to live in. There's so much going on, and so much on so many levels. Namaste to each and every one of you. We are very much in a really an amazing time on about 1,000 different levels. Uh, the world seems in some levels, some facets of it, if you would. I think that oftentimes, if we could spend the time to actually look at life, we would see that the journey of our life is very much like that of a precious stone. It has many facets, all cut at different angles, and each one of those facets has a significance. Every phase of every step that you go through in your life is really a universal, if you would, orchestrated. Now, understand that when I say that you are the universe, and so there's so many things that are really so heavy for people to grasp because they're so foreign from what we've all been programmed to believe. And so we live in a cosmos, we live in a universe that's created, and yet we were at the beginning of this creation, and that might be a bit much for many people. I've had several intuitions lately about people and their ability to receive, and I think there's lots of questions. Why is it that people can't seem to get there? And we know that that's true because historically Yeshua taught that a lot. He taught a lot about people that would hear, should hear, without really mentioning, though, he creates a separation between those that are and those that aren't. And so I think that's kind of perplexing to humans, because then when you get brought to that place, then most people, most people that have a heart anyway, they then begin to ask, well, am I one of those? Am I one of those who are, or am I one of those who's not? And inevitably, there is a place, I think, that we either maybe can possess that, maybe it's clearer than for maybe somebody else, or maybe you're not as clear is then on the other side of someone else. Someone else seems very easily to grasp the concepts, and yet you seem to struggle over and over and over about the same things. And of course, that is a psychological loop that all of us, if we don't do something to get out of it, then we find ourselves continuing to stay stuck in it. And of course, that never is a good feeling, to be stuck in something that we have no understanding about. And so it's really, I think it's really imperative. There is some things, I hope they don't happen, to be quite honest with you, but if in fact they do, it's going to make all of this spiritualism really, really significant. How can we free ourselves from a bondage that humanity has lived in millions of years with no knowledge that you were in bondage? How can you free yourself from that? I'm sure that for those that I know that have been in Christianity, I'm sure there is a sector of those who believe that emphatically the Bible is the only truth. And if that's your belief, then by all means, I understand that you will continue on that route. You might be a little bit disappointed when you get to the end and have no knowledge of what it all means. And so it's going to be really, really interesting the next time in front of us. As you can tell, last night watching the State of the Union, Source sent a word into me, and it was this simple statement that Yeshua taught. And that statement is that a house that's divided against itself absolutely cannot stand. I know many of you may not understand this, but there is a special place in America. If you like me, I grew up believing that this was God's house, God's place. My grandfather did a wonderful job of instilling in me good Christian ethics and morals and wisdom and understanding, and then only to find that all of that was a paradigm that he was programmed into, and at many levels really wasn't truth at all. It was control. And so if you've been a Christian your whole life, and you in any way, even to the point of if you're struggling with some of these things that you're hearing and learning, and I know there's a lot of people that are, how do you go from that you need an external Savior to you are the Savior? I think it's a very, very valid question that you might benefit from if you would take some quiet time, some silence time, and ask yourself, how do I really feel about this? What does it really mean? Because I will tell you, whether you maybe realize it or don't, the journey that we're on is the most important journey that you'll ever be on, and yet it's really not that important. And I don't know if will be able to express fully what I mean by that concept. But if there is no hell and there is no sin, then what difference does it make what I do? And that is a very valid thought process. Although there are ramifications that come with it. And so when we begin to be told, let's say someone that loved you told you, that you must put away the avatar yourself, and that only in doing that will you ever truly find your true self, because there is a level of reality to our avatar self. It's the way that you talk, and the way that you were taught to talk. It's the way that you think, and the way that you were taught to think. You've been doing it your whole life. You are very practiced at being the avatar. You are very practiced at being fake. And you perceive yourself, even if you just emotionally felt the hair go up on the back of your neck when I said that, and you would maybe then take the emotion immediately that he just told me that I'm this. And in reality, there's even an explanation for that. So, but how do we break through in the spirit realm, the not real me, to dig down and be able to find the real me? I think that's life's most valid question, or at least one of them that is very. And are there any ramifications if I choose not to? I've had people tell me, oh, well, I don't care a thing about, you can talk about all that meditation, but I'm never going to do it. And it's fine. I say, by all means, you shouldn't, because no matter what it is, if it's not real inside of you, then it's never going to manifest what you may not even have a desire to manifest, like joy and peace and happiness and all of those things. And so why is it important? It's important because we have been programmed into a belief system that somehow we are broken, and that's one of, I think, the biggest revelations that you might get out of this. Now, by saying that I'm not broken, does that mean that there are no constraints on my behavior, or that I have no responsibility for my behavior? Quite honestly, friends, we're not broken. We are certainly oftentimes under a cloud of obscurity of what truth and reality is. And you can certainly do lots of things that maybe you were told in Christianity are bad, and they're not necessarily bad. But on the other side, even if you take the basic biblical principle that Yeshua taught, and yet again, most of the value of the Bible is really in the teachings of Yeshua. And I'll even go as far to say, and those that know me know that I used to struggle when I was under the bondage of reality that the Bible was real, it was literal, that Paul was a bad person because Paul taught people to do things that were contrary to what was supposed to be the truth. And so I'm thankful for this spiritual movement that's going on. I'm thankful for the truth and the increase. But I have noticed a few things with that, and I guess maybe a little bit of that is what I hope to sow into somebody. I don't know who it'll sow into, but I hope it sows into somebody. That you are living a life with a whole system of thought processes which in many cases are not benefiting humanity very well. You know, I asked the simple question, well, if we are so evolved, and if Christianity, which is a huge part of it, but you could really say any religion, is so exalted, then why is it it's not functioning in helping people? I've met people that I've shared simple little spiritual truths with that have had times of anxiety free with just simply a few words of truth. I've watched people that have heard truth that still live in anxiety, and of course as a person who's looking to understand, those things perplex me, but they really perplex me the most when I recognize them about myself. And so that I believe with all of my heart that many of the constraints that we are taught in religion are at a large part are the source of much of our anxiety. And then I find that that's exactly what they were intended to do. So what does it mean in reality that I'm not broken? Unfortunately, most people take what their mind, what their avatar understands something to be, and they want to move into a spirit realm while being an avatar. Okay, you're trying to understand things that aren't avatar, but are truth, are consciousness, and we're trying to understand them through the eyes of the avatar, the ego, the human mind, and explain something that is so high compared to that which is trying to explain it. It would be like you trying to explain to Albert Einstein what nuclear fusion involves. And unfortunately, there's a large piece that we are living. It is breaking and it is changing. It is going to break and it is going to be bigger. And so we have all of these people who, it's really funny, some of the most delusional spiritual people that I've met to this date are people who followed Dolores Cannon and yet never understood what she was talking about in the first place. They will tell you how all you need is already in you, and you are love and love and love and love and love and love and love, and no requirements, no concept of consciousness, and yet it's all love. And in reality, love is the most powerful force, but it kind of brings you back to the place of what is love. Is love doing what you want while you simply hide your unconsciousness under the guise of love? It's a question, I promise you, if you're a thinker, you might hear that. There's no shame and no condemnation, no matter what the purpose is. If you desire to continue to create the life that you're living in, if that life is your paradigm of greatness, then by all means just continue to do it. If you believe that you can behave, treat, be unconscious of other people because you're what it's all about anyways, you're functioning in the ego mind. But if you believe that that's higher spirituality, then certainly you should continue to do that. Because it's only when we recognize that something isn't that we have any hope of finding what something may truly be. And so I watch people go on and around and around and around with this concept, and it gets very heavy. We're going to die in the human body, and all of these things that I've tried to gather and share with people are going to manifest themselves. It's okay if you don't believe in the archons. Inevitably, when you die and leave your body, you'll find out for yourself. But we have many, many, many centuries of people who've gone before us who tell us that that's true. So I think that oftentimes we are unenlightened, and yet the understanding that we perceive, which is also a trait of ego, that I am right. And I say, if you're right, then you're right. It's really quite amazing, because I actually believe that anything that you believe is your truth. I didn't say it was truth. I said it's your truth. So people can be mindless in how they act and behave with other people, and to them, that's spirituality. And I say it is. The question isn't, is something spiritual? The question is am I coming into the place that inevitably was hidden from me with the purpose of destroying me? And am I coming to a place where inner peace begins to rule? Not outer situations, but inner peace. Have you come to the place? Have you woken up and told yourself lately, I really like who I am? Well, to be sure, there will be people in both sides of the picture that I'm trying to paint for you tonight. There will be people on both sides saying the exact same words. And so what it seems like, it's starting to come into my consciousness that what someone perceives to be the truth is the truth to them. It's not necessarily the truth. It's not necessarily truth in the concept that the universe wants us to imagine. Okay? But it is what you perceive to be truth, and for you, it is truth. And so I think that while many people are looking for an easier way to salvation, when in reality, I already am salvation. Think about that for a minute. What would it look like with you if you begin to recognize that all of the lies that have been put on us are lies, and that I'm still living in them while I think that I'm coming out of them? How would that affect you in your human mind, and how would that affect you in your mind? So you're already something, and yet you believe you're something else. We are already divine, friends. I think that's one of the greatest truths that really is starting to come to light, and there are millions of people out there speaking the same truth. That is reality, but dependent on the state of your mind, your human mind, and the control that your human mind exerts over your spiritual self will determine what your truth is, what it looks like, how it functions, how it behaves. I've said many times, and I've often wondered why, and then I begin to look, and it's as if Source continues to point me in a direction that it's not so much that Yeshua said kind of openly that there is separation between humans. We can move to Dolores Cannon in the 1960s, and she said the same thing. And you today in modern New Age spiritual movement will be deemed as a heretic if you tell people that there are those people who will never find enlightenment. I mean, you understand there's a huge paradox there. So it seems like what the universe is trying to say to us is, I am, and you are too, but how you interpret that is going to determine everything for you. If you interpret it lightly, if you interpret it selfishly, your truth is going to appear completely different. It's not going to be maybe what Source is looking for. And so I think in all of this, you might ask the age-old question, what is it that Source really wants from us? And if you would go and study psychology, you will find for thousands of years, humans have asked, what is life even about? Christianity couldn't explain it. It's about, if you live like Jesus, then you'll go to heaven and everything will be static. You will lay around and play harps on clouds and stuff. But the reality is that the universe is not a static environment. And so immediately, once again, one of those places where I'm trying to get people to think, to help people think differently. And I think if we would be honest, we really haven't been, and not even that you believe it, but in the event that you may believe even some of it, then certainly you would have to do yourself the service of understanding that you've lived, unless you're just a baby, and if you're a baby you won't understand, and maybe if you're an adult you still don't understand. But you've been practicing at being the avatar, you've been practicing at being the person that you are, and if you believe that you're just going to unwrap that instantaneously and take up all the tools to prosper and flourish, because someone tells you that you've got all that you need inside of you. The truth is you do have all that you need. The truth is you are supernatural. The truth is that you are already an eternal being, but that doesn't give you destiny, okay? All humans that possess soul, there's been much looking, much words, and much thought about which ones. I have a discernment, and I often don't even have to ask questions about who is an archon. Often, you just simply watch them. Are they mindless? Are they focused on self? Are they looking? Many of those things on their own. And so it doesn't in any way diminish that they are around us constantly. But stop and ponder for a second. What might it look like if a human is trying to understand the spiritual from an avatar, a human mind, and they hear something? They're going to have a resonation just like a spiritual person who understands spirituality is going to have a resonance. And then, because we use terms generically without depth and wisdom and understanding, we hear somebody say, well, I didn't resonate with that, and somebody else says, man, I resonated with it completely. And so then you come to the question, well, which one of them was right? Both. It's really been amazing for me, the piece of the journey, and this is very difficult because really, honestly, our ego is nothing but a control freak. And even when you begin to wake up a little bit, you begin to see the control going on around you. You begin to see people, how they manipulate and control people. And I'm not talking about narcissists. They're professionals at that manipulation. I'm talking about all humans as a general class. They're all some don't need loud voices to manipulate. They simply manipulate you by getting you to behave contrary to who you really are. And so that is an amazing concept. Who am I? Who is the true you? Have you asked yourself that? Have you begun a journey to find out who am I really? if there's any credence, if there's any truth to this concept of being an avatar, and really all the avatar means is simply that you're controlled by your ego. And so, of course, as the sad reality is you'll never begin to change something that you don't believe needs to be changed. And so you hear a spiritualist say, oh, well, this is who I am. And you may perceive that as being something that comes from the same place that you are when you make that statement. And I've recognized this quite often, that I've had people say, oh, well, we're, and I kind of hesitate at that. Wait a second. You don't have nothing to do with who I am as higher self. We're not anything. I am a sovereign. And it's when you begin to grab these revelations that I am eternal, not we're, there is a collective consciousness, but the collective consciousness is only of like-spirited, like people, not like-minded, like-spirited. And they don't allow other people to control them because they're a sovereign and they're well aware of their sovereignty. Now, does that mean that you don't work with people? Absolutely not. And if that is your picture of reality, you might want to go back and look at that again. You might want to rethink it. Because if and it is, but I only pose a question because many people clinch with fixed. So as much as we want everything to be fixed, we really want everything to be very fluid. And we want it to flow typically according to what our thought processes are. So think about this. In our society, we look around and man, Christianity was really good about training us to be this. You know, when the big craze and all the tattoos came out, how many of you that were in Christianity actually had a lower standard looking at those people? Whether you ever said anything or not, you looked at them in disdain. There's another place. What about all of the people in our society who look at homosexuality? And because you were taught the Bible's version, you now look at those people in disdain with no conscious understanding at all that the human body has nothing to do with it but to be a house. So how do you know? A person may be superior to you in spirituality and be something that you abhor, and yet they're in no way out of concept with the universe. Think about that a second. It's a little bit bigger than just the mere words. The whole concept of us looking inside for self is because if you're not looking inside for self, you're looking at someone else who is programming you, whether they do it unintentionally by behavior, whether they do it unintentionally by language, whether they do it unintentionally in many different ways. But what Source wants us to come to is that inevitably those people who see themselves as wholeness. See, it's a real sad thing in the human mind that as long as we continue to see ourselves as broken, that's what we will vibrate at. And of course, inevitably, everything comes to frequency. Everything comes to vibration. And that includes so many things. Music is a vibration. We've been watching some stuff and I've been quite enamored lately because I was always a Bible freak that was waiting for all the supernatural to become normal. Well, I understand that what that was is my higher self taking truth that had been presented to me from ancient and it creating it, igniting it, lighting something inside of me that was good and positive and clean. When you see the thing of, and the lion will lay down with the lamb, and you think about the fact that Adam and Hua were gifted to be able to verbalize, whether it was through spoken word or whether it was through telepathy, and most believe that it was through telepathy. And then you watch what's going on in society, of the things and the differences that are happening with animals in this universe. The universe is changing, friends. Or is it really that humans are finally recognizing that they're not who they were told they were? And as we grow and learn to truly love, then true love oftentimes is a guide to change, but it's just as probable that true love will have no desire to change anyone. If you desire to follow lower self and live in a state of frequency and look for external things, and you have no desire to look inside, then why would you be fake? Just do that. I can tell you that there are outcomes that come from these things, but all of those outcomes are really predicated by you. You create the intention. You create coherence. You are the one that come into timing. It's really a beautiful thing that has all of a sudden popped up, because I know many of you that I've talked to have struggles. Well, how could God let Hitler do all that he did, or Mussolini, or you can take any of the humans that have existed on this earth? How could God let those people have done such horrible and heinous things? And so that's kind of a perplexion. They're still using it in this modern society. How do we hear that? Well, you're a Nazi because you desire to benefit people. See, it's the new norm. That good is now bad and bad is now good. Well, just so you know, there was a prophecy in the Bible that tells us there was coming a time in history when everything would be flipped upside down. And if you can't look around your world around you and see the upside downedness about everything, it's about sexuality. It's about everything. Boys want to be girls and girls want to be boys, and and then you get outside of that and you ask yourself, well, should it really matter? And does it really matter? Because none of that is going to affect me if I find the right path. When I come to the revelation, and I mean deep revelation, intertwining direct gnosis revelation, when you come to that nothing that exists on this earth is more powerful than you, and the only things on this earth that can control you are the things that you give the ability to control you. Nothing else can control you. We are sovereign. We are the universe. And I know that there have been people already who've said, man, them people are weird. I am weird, according to the standard of the world. What I refuse to do is to allow the standard of the world be what determines who I am. Now, I can't say any of us, and I certainly know about myself, that I was just as capable of doing that as any other human that's ever lived on this earth. The beauty of spiritual people, true, peaceful-looking spiritual people that are looking for more. Inside of me, I know that there's more. Maybe some of you have been in that place. Maybe your whole life you've said, man, why is it that I just seem to be the beaten bag of everybody around me? And it's really starting to come to my mind that if you are one of those, then I would say to you, you really maybe need to put aside the programming of society, because I've heard people ask the question, well, it's like I was born into this earth for everybody to beat on me. And the reality is that that's simply the earth functioning in the manner in which it's always functioned. So here's a piece I would like to share with you tonight. What if we had an unlimited amount of amazing power that we know nothing about? It takes work, it takes dedication, it takes intention, it takes coherence, it takes consciousness to even come to the place to begin to access that. So Christianity promises you that you can be a mindless buffoon and call out on Jesus, and all of a sudden you've become supernaturally perfect. Don't you see the lie and the scam in that? Because calling out on Jesus has never changed a person. I listen to people on the TV who do horrible things with horrible foul mouths, shaking their big butts in front of everybody, and wear a cross on their neck and call themselves a Christian. I had a girl in my office at the church that tried to get me to have sex with her in my office that told me that she was a good Christian. And there's many of those. So then we have to ask ourselves a question. What is it that I'm here for, and what am I looking for? I don't know about you guys, but I'm beginning to believe that we can come and live an amazing life down here, complete a journey that we chose intentionally, bring ourselves to a place where we can actually, for the first time in our life, begin to live in our purpose. Be careful with that, because what your purpose is where inevitably you will end up. That is what you focus on. Well, I'm going to accomplish this. I'm going to accomplish this. And you focus on that. And that inevitably is what the universe, what we don't understand, and what I hope all of us will in time begin to learn to understand, is that unless we are open and awake, we won't know what those words really even mean. So if I was to ask you, what is your life purpose? I've heard all kinds of things. It's really crazy. Some of them I just go, wow, good luck with that. I hope you get what you're looking for, because that's foreign gibberish to me. Metaphysical truths I don't seem to have much problem understanding. I feel them. But the gibberish that's being taught in our society, I don't even understand it anymore. I don't understand how we can conceive that we are higher while we let them totally destroy our children. I can't imagine that as love. I look at the things that are going on in America, just so that you know, America is set for a day of judgment for the sins that the country as a whole has established. There's at least 5 prophecies over 2,000 years that I have read that speak of America the light that stands on the edge of a precipice between destruction. Listen, friends, if you've listened to any spirituality, you've heard a lot of people tell you that you are a lot of things. But we have to be honest about the end that no one wants to talk about. Okay? If you go back 40,000 years or so, you end up in one of the 6 incarnations that have happened in a place called Lemuria, who was so far advanced from us that we probably, for quite some time, several thousand years, will still never come to the place of consciousness that those people had, and yet, because of themselves, it was destroyed. And you could go back 20,000 years, plus or minus 150, 200,000 years, and you land to a place called Atlantis. Well, we know that Edgar Cayce brought from the Akashic Record that there in fact was an Atlantis. We know that right now the crystals that used to provide power to the whole world, which you know nothing about because they hid it from you, are starting to reignite in the Bermuda Triangle again. I know that these things seem far-fetched, but they only seem far-fetched to people who have no interest to find out. Because if you have an interest to find out, dear friend, the information's out there. And so Atlantis and so here's the dire warning for you. The destruction of Atlantis, who was a higher consciousness society than what we will probably be for a long time, was destroyed because of ego. There are some people who are descendants of Atlanteans that live. There were descendants of Atlanteans that came and brought wisdom to Solomon. Solomon's wisdom that came to him that God gave him, God is consciousness. So when you begin to understand that consciousness isn't this long gray-haired bearded thing that wears a robe that fills the temple, because the metaphor that David was talking about, God sitting in a temple and his robe filled the temple, is you, the hope of glory. So for some of you David was a mystic. All of that whole mysticism was taken and manipulated to convince you that there is an external God that you must bow to, and if he decides to have a bad day, he may squash you just as fast as he will bless you. Okay? When in reality, David was talking about the God, the same God that Solomon talked about, the same God that Yeshua talked about, the same God that Buddha talked about, the same God that Krishna talked about, and that God lives in you. He is you. And so I'm quite sure that for many people that's a really, really, really heavy thought process if they don't write it off just totally as science fiction. But I hate to tell you, dear one, it's not science fiction at all. It is reality. We are every day, whether you like it or lump it, we are every day creating the world in which we live in. We know nothing about how to stop or manipulate that. And I don't use manipulation in that concept because we can manipulate the universe. And we do that, you could more probably appropriately use the term work the universe. And so if you're one of the ones who are in a place, and there's lots of people on this earth right now that are in this place, it's really quite crazy how all over the earth people are all of a sudden starting to ask questions that haven't been asked for thousands of years. Like, why was I created and I'm such a horrible human? Any of you guys ever walked through your life and looked at yourself through a picture, and in your mind you were maybe the lowest of the low? In your mind, maybe you were the baddest of the bad, and you know what? You set out to do everything you could do to prove yourself that you were right every single day. You lied because you believed that you were a liar. You stole because you believed that you were a thief. And on and on and on. And so it's not just metaphoric conjecture when I say to you, or when any spiritual person says to you, that right now, this very minute, there are people who are creating their reality while I speak these words. Unconscious that we have the power that we do, and that's a real sad thing. How amazing might it be? So now I'm going to talk about the utopian stage, because we're going to start seeing that manifest more. It is already, but it's going to continue to increase. 2026 will be very powerful. It will be a different world by the time we get to the end of this year. You can be assured of that. But to many people, nothing will look any different. The most spiritual person that spent more time other than Edgar Cayce was Dolores Cannon, and she speaks of the destruction of this country because of the sin that we've committed to the world. So there's a lot of spiritual people who say they follow Dolores Cannon and yet know nothing about what she believed. Be very careful is what I'm saying to you. You already are everything that exists. The only question each one of us has to answer is, am I interested? Am I willing to change what has been for what could be? I could have a good life if. And that is the truth. You could have a good life if. And how you define that, how you use that, how you play with that, and for many, life is way too serious. They're just looking for an escape, mindless escape. They do that through many, many things. And actually, I would say it's the most prominent psychosis in America. That we would rather fill our lives with things that we think are pleasurable, that our mindless self can do with no consciousness of it, and yet wonder why we're not the greatness that we could be. And so I hope that you will begin to look in yourself. You're not a bad person. You're just simply a spirit force that hasn't yet come to the understanding of what you really are. And that's up for all of us at many levels. I don't think that I know anyone who is what I might say fully awakened. I know many people that are beginning little by little to awaken. And the first thing when you begin to awaken is you begin to see that you are separated from this thing that I call self. And it's causing the consternation in your life because you keep looking at who you are and you still can't see who you are. And so I hope you guys will ponder some of these things as Yeshua taught us, that reflection is consciousness looking at the things that have been presented. I shared with you guys a week or so ago that I had a vision, and I was sitting. I had a great gray beard. I looked very stoic. It was the person was set in the time maybe of the mind picture of what you might call the Greeks, the great thinkers, and it certainly was a very unique time in history, and much truth came out. But I was holding the world, and I was looking at it, and it made me cry. It was horrible. Because I know people that I've known for years in my life, and yet that's them. And so I hope that you will allow yourself to look inside. If you have to act kindness, then it's not kindness. If you have to cause yourself intentionally to do things simply to extrovert some outside behavior, then whatever the behavior is it's not real. What if you just allowed yourself to truly be kind? What if you didn't condemn yourself when you were unkind, but you only recognized that you now know how unkindness makes you feel? See, until it's inside of us, friends, it's not real. It's still part of the avatar. When you begin to love people genuinely, simply not because you like them, not because you agree with them, but simply because they are you, then your world will very soon explode. And so, peace to each and every one of you. I hope that you will maybe take these words and ponder on them a bit. Our avatar is just simply an outworking of programming. And I don't blame me for programming myself. I don't blame my parents for programming me. I don't blame Christianity for programming me. Because if I hadn't been programmed, I would never know the luxury of what it feels like to begin to become unprogrammed. See, it is a luxury. It is a blessing to begin to look at myself and go, that's me, but I don't like that. I don't have any condemnation about that. I've done horrible things. I've done heinous things my whole life. And I'm not condemned by them. They were. And I'm willing to accept them and not resist. I think, and it's going to come up a lot here, but I think if each one of you would simply ask yourself, maybe sometimes in situations you encounter, am I resisting right? Because, as I said, simply asking the question, I think that many people in our society are kind of devoid of understanding about asking questions is not a bad thing. If you doubt anything I say is true, then I say you have some intelligence. On the other side, I also know that if you have some intelligence, you will eventually find that what I've shared with you, in fact, was the truth. And so, peace to each and every one of you. I hope that take some time and just let yourself vibrate. Let that greatness emanate out of you. If you lay in bed and all of a sudden your body begins to buzz, take it for the blessing that it is. It's the universe showing you that you are flowing with frequency. And so, peace and love and shalom to each and every one of you. There's great things in front of us. Namaste.